In May Vanguard's biggest issue is its endgame and how it's basically non-existent. Let me explain. Before Update 10, there were 3 core endgame modes. These are tournaments that happen once per week, and the Worldlands and Infinite leaderboards. But around 1 or 2 weeks ago, it was just announced that in the upcoming updates that both the Worldlands and Infinite leaderboards would soon be deleted. And like a lot of other people, I'm not a huge fan of this. Worldlands is one of my favorite games to grind due to the sheer amount of strategy it requires. And I find it really stupid how they gave us 2 meta infinite units only to make the game mode basically useless. Looking back at the announcement, their main reasoning for doing this is because of the pressure to grind these modes constantly, which doesn't make sense to me. Overall, the rewards for even getting on the leaderboard aren't even that great in my opinion. I mean, the 100 rewards is really nice, but it starts to become like nothing when you get that amount just from codes during a new update, not even including all of the free-to-play ways to obtain these rewards. Even constantly getting first place in tournaments each week offers more, and it's per week, which if you ask me, pushes more players to grind those tournaments too. The main prizes for placing well are cosmetics, so their statement just felt like an excuse to remove them. But why? A little bit later in the announcement, another reason for this change is because the skins take too long to make. Are you serious? For one, tournament skins exist, and not just 1 but 2. They claim it takes 6 days to create a skin, when in the recent fall update, they literally made 6 skins, 3 of which were for units from that same update. And skins aside, let's talk about how Worldlands doesn't even reward the players with a skin, but a shiny Worldlands unit. Okay, Infinite Leaderboard I can kind of understand removing it, because all you really do is place down your units, and like go to sleep until you eventually lose. But like I said earlier, Worldlands requires a lot of strategy. So to summarize, there's really no reason to remove Worldlands because it requires a lot of strategy, the rewards aren't even that amazing so there's no pressure to keep playing it, and the grand prize is not a skin but a shiny Worldlands unit that the devs are going to make anyways regardless if leaderboards existed. But if you are paying any sort of attention, I mentioned that this is all before Update 10. They added a new mode, a mode so difficult that it requires other players to beat it, and I'm talking about Elemental Towers. In my last video, I was saying how much I like the mode and that it's a great addition to the game. I think definitely my favorite mode is the Elemental Towers because I could find myself having a lot of fun doing this, which I still stand by, but I later realized the issues this mode had compared to Borderlands. The whole gimmick of this mode is that you can only use 1 element for each tower. And while the gimmick itself isn't inherently bad, it's missing one of the core things that made the Worldlands great to begin with. Team building. Being locked towards 1 element kind of sucks. Because what happens when you're trying to complete the nature tower and the best unit you can use is Kagya, you're going to realize that not every element is fair. There are just some elements that are extremely powerful, like Unbound and Curse, and some that are falling a bit behind, like Nature and Blast. While Unbound and Curse has units like Broly, Sukuna, and Ainz, the best unit for Blast is, well, Tengen, who isn't even a bad unit, and in fact, he's a good supporting unit, he just lacks DPS. But compared to Borderlands, each weather buffs and debuffs at least 1 element. Sometimes buffs can be 70% and debuffs can be up to 100%. For example, if Sparks gets a 70% damage buff, it's obvious, use Spark units and easily win, right? Well, technically not true, as unlike Elemental Towers, you're not limited to the Spark element. If Water gets debuffed by 50%, you can still use an amazing support in Newsman. If Unbound is debuffed, there's Alucard. Team building is much easier when your options aren't restricted, as the debuffs really only affect the DPS units. And while yeah, there is a certain weather that does only allow the usage of Unbound and Passion, 2 elements are still better than 1, and the Broly is so good in the first place that the weather was never really an issue. And I haven't even mentioned that Borderlands has modes for both traits and traitless, so even players who do not have an abundance of rerolls can still participate. So to summarize, Borderlands is just a strictly better game mode than Elemental Towers, though that is just my opinion. And while Anime Vanguard lacked any HUD content for a while until this new game mode, the elements of gimmick just kind of ruined it for me due to the limited strategic thinking it requires and how it's more of a Monarch contest. If you like Elemental Towers, great, that's awesome. I do understand that there are people who really only care about having powerful Monarch units and seeing them deal lots of damage, but personally I'm more of a fan of strategy than raw damage. But even after what I said, I still think Elemental Towers is a good change, or at the very least is going in the right direction. Now I don't want to say I'm like the voice of the people or anything because I'm really not, and people just have different opinions. Some of you watching may say that Elemental Towers is like the best game mode in the game, which I'll disagree with you, but I can understand why. Because for so long, players have asked the devs to make a game mode for random players to use a Monarch unit on, and they finally gave it to us. Anyways, if you want to see more of my content, click the video on screen where I completed the One Piece update in Anime Vanguards, and also subscribe.